Welcome to the Tate Gallery. One of the most well-known of all modern artists is Pablo Picasso. Picasso was a Spaniard who lived and worked in France for most of his life. When he died in 1973, at the age of 92, he left many works which can now be found in galleries, museums and private collections all over the world. The Tate Gallery is a home for several works by Picasso, and today we are going to take a look at 11 of them, and one by his friend, the painter Georges Braque. Picasso was a handsome young man of 24 when he painted this portrait in profile of a girl wearing a garment known to the French as a chemise. He seems to have responded to her fragile, delicate appearance as she stares dreamily, perhaps from the balcony outside his studio in Paris, as the sunlight slants across her slender body. Creamy white and dark blue are the main colors of the picture. It was a scheme which Picasso used often at this period of his life. Maybe this was because he too felt lonely. He was not yet a well-known painter, and living in a poor district of Paris, he saw all around him poor and sick people leading miserable lives. The girl in this painting is typical of the many people who had to work hard to make a living. Picasso was also fascinated by the singers, actresses and dancers who he saw in the bars and cafes, and especially the circus people. The artist visited the circus tents where he watched acrobats, clowns, jugglers and the trapeze artists working. He became friends with them and their families and made many drawings of them. Back in his studio, he would redraw these detailed sketches onto canvas, putting the figures and animals in different positions in order to make many pictures. These paintings have a sad, melancholy kind of beauty. It is as if the artist is showing us what it was to be lonely clowns or poor cafe singers watching their sad lives go by. Throughout his career, Picasso was interested in early Greek art, especially, as in this case, the subject of Greek sport. A favorite was young men taking part in horse races. In this painting of a boy with a horse, Picasso not only shows us his interest in the art of the Greeks, but also uses his experience of working with the circus people and their animals. This painting is one of a number on the subject. Here, the drawing, which is made with firm, dark lines, is emphasized. However, the color schemes vary. We notice that a rose pink predominates, and that the background, entirely in this color, extends from the top to the bottom of the painting. The horizon line occupies only one side of the work, so that the flatness is used to show up clearly the curving, athletic grace of the horse and the boy leaning towards each other in a friendly manner. After this painting of a single horse and rider, Picasso did another with several young men, some riding bareback, splashing in and out of a lake or a river, with hills in the background. Contrasted with the previous picture we saw, the girl in a chemise, this painting seems happy and carefree. Perhaps one of the most important visual ideas to impress Picasso was gained in 1907, when he visited a museum in Paris containing African masks and sculpture. It was these, along with other ideas, that led him to begin to paint in a more geometric manner that was to be called cubist. In this painting, titled Bust of a Woman, we can see clearly the influence of the African sculpture and masks on Picasso's work. The use of the word bust, which is a sculptural term meaning head and shoulders, as part of the title, is itself important. The form of the figure in the painting is more like a wooden carving than a human being. Even the rich brown colour suggests a block of wood which has been cut away in geometrical facets, uneven in shape, some angular, some curved. The body appears to be solid, but the head with its top knot of hair is shallow, as though the back of the skull is missing, rather like a mask. The whole surface of the picture is broken up into small areas. The colour of the paint is muted and tonal, a feature of many cubist paintings. This is another example of Picasso's cubist paintings. We can see that it is a picture of a seated female figure in front of a wall, perhaps covered by a curtain. But Picasso would have said that this was not the most important thing about the picture. He was much more interested in how it is painted than in the subject matter. Picasso and his friend the painter Georges Braque felt that it should be possible to paint things from many different viewpoints, just like our ever-moving eyes see things, not from one fixed place, but from many different angles. Here we can see that the figure, the chair, and the background are all equally important to the painter, and it shows the small angular shapes he used, leading other people to call it cubist. The colours have changed from the warm brown of wood to the shadowy, mysterious colours of blue and grey. Unlike the earlier paintings we have seen, Picasso is not interested in the character or personality of the woman, but only in the shapes and spaces she provides for the picture. It's impossible to look at Picasso's work of this period without looking also at the paintings of his friend Georges Braque. At this time, the two painters were working in their own studios not far from one another, and they met almost daily to look at and exchange thoughts about their paintings. The subject of this picture is a collection of objects on a mantelpiece, one of which is a clarinet, another a bottle of rum, hence the title, Clarinet, Bottle of Rum on a Mantelpiece. However, because the painting is made up of so many small shapes and lines, it is at first difficult to find the musical instrument, and even more difficult to see the bottle, until one realizes that it stands in front of the clarinet. This bottle, with the letters RHU on its label, has a square neck and what appears to be a broken section. In this way, the space and air inside the bottle are made more obvious because we can see right into its dark glass. The idea of the space being as important as the objects was an idea that interested both Picasso and Braque. The clarinet is divided into two, and the mouthpiece on the right is in 3 sections instead of 1. This came about because Braque's viewpoint moved back a little as he drew each section, so that it became smaller than the previous one. Like Picasso, he did not draw his subjects from one position only, he used several viewpoints. At the bottom of the painting is the word valse. It is French for the dance that we know as the waltz. Braque was fond of music. He often played the concertina himself. And perhaps the word is a clue that the surrounding shapes are sheets of music. At the top of the painting, there is something that is rather strange. He has painted a large rough nail with a shadow falling in a direction different to all the other shadows. The Cubist painters wanted to show things from different viewpoints. Here, perhaps, we can see Braque having a little joke at the expense of those very serious critics who wrote about the work he and Picasso were doing. In the spring of 1913, Picasso produced a number of works which are known as papier-collé. This simply means that the artist stuck cut or torn pieces of paper onto a background and then drew or painted on top of them if he so wished. In this work, Guitar, Newspaper, Wineglass and Bottle, we can see a dark green velvety paper as well as newspaper and ordinary pale coloured plain paper. Picasso seems to be playing about with shapes, cutting the edge on one side of the wineglass in a different way to the other. The guitar is only just suggested. It has one curved side and a central hole. Most of the work is in plain pale colours, so that the dark shapes, including the word Figaro, stand out dramatically. Notice how carefully Picasso has placed those dark shapes so that all the dark areas are not too close together. Figaro is the name of a French newspaper. You will see that the date is visible. It is a fragment of a newspaper printed 30 years before Picasso made the picture. It's thought that he specially chose this edition as it carries a story about the Romanov Tsars, and in Paris during 1913, celebrations took place to commemorate the 300th anniversary of continuous Romanov rule in Russia. After the war, which was soon to break out in Europe, Picasso and Braque never met again. Their lives and work had taken different directions. Throughout his long life, Picasso often felt the need to make things rather than just to paint. Often it was a way of sorting out problems in his paintings. This still life of 1914 is attached to a wall. A bobble fringe edges a small section of a tabletop on which stand a wineglass, a knife, and some slices of food, all roughly cut from pieces of wood. A simple patterned wooden bar running along the back suggests a strip of decorative wallpaper. This is one of the last cheerful works that Picasso was to make for a long while. War had broken out, and many of his friends were away fighting. Some, like the poet Apollinaire, to return wounded, others to die. Picasso was able to continue working because, as a Spaniard living in France, he was not expected to fight. Times were hard for a painter. Nobody wanted to buy paintings, and when his lover Eva died, Picasso must have felt it was against him. Picasso painted this picture in the period when Europe was beginning to recover from the effects of the war, a time when artists, designers, architects began to work again. In 1918, the Ballet Russe was in Paris, led by the now famous impresario Diaghilev. Diaghilev encouraged many young artists, including Picasso, by asking them to contribute designs for sets and costumes for his ballets. While working with the ballet company, Picasso met, fell in love with, and later married Olga, a beautiful young dancer. In this painting, we see a woman depicted as strong, serene, and Grecian, an idea that was probably prompted by the happy holidays he and Olga spent together by the Mediterranean Sea. Picasso painted this picture in the same year as the last painting. She is strong and robust, but she doesn't sit so comfortably upright. Sitting twisted at an angle on a chair, looking into her lap, she gives the impression of being a shy countrywoman who has led a very different style of life from the famous, much-traveled Picassos. Throughout his life, Picasso painted many women. Women played an important part in his life, and all his pictures of women show each in a unique and special way. This painting is one of the most important to be owned by the Tate Gallery. The reason is that in it, Picasso worked out a new and very personal way of dealing with a traditional subject. 3 circling, dancing figures, a motif which dates back to early Greek art. Picasso also makes reference to the crucifixion, which derives from Christian art, and at the same time weaves his own personal story and feelings into it. In the 3 dancers here, Picasso portrays the suffering he felt for the unhappiness and tragedy of a group of his close friends. The story begins long before 1925, when he painted the picture. When Picasso first arrived in Paris in 1901, he journeyed from Spain with a young artist friend, Casagemas, who shortly after committed suicide for the love of a girlfriend called Germaine. It is thought that the figure on the left of the painting is Germaine, who later married Ramon Pichot, another friend from Spain. The 3 flattened figure shapes, hands linked, hold the Germaine character in one of the strangest positions ever to be painted. She is wildly twisted backwards, naked to the waist, with only a small striped skirt below. Her enormous bare feet appear to be stamping the ground with great force. Her face, horribly cracked with sharp, pointed teeth in an open mouth, is shown from at least 2 viewpoints. Mask slits, rather than eyes, glitter menacingly, and the eroded chin serves as the lower part of another profile. On the right, the male figure has 2 heads, one inside the other. The small inner brown one with a hole at the temple could be the dead Casagemas, and the other, covering it like a huge black death mask, Pichot. Both men had loved Germaine. Whilst the artist was working on the painting, Pichot also died, and Picasso then added the death's head. The central figure, arms high with hands against the top of the frame of the French windows, is shown in the position of Christ on the cross, yet it is seen to be a woman. The 2 female figures may contain memories of Germaine, but for Picasso perhaps they also refer to Olga, his dancer wife, with whom Picasso was now finding life difficult. Because the painting shows us a complex range of feelings in a vivid and unusual way, it adds a fresh understanding of both life and art, and the way in which the 2 are necessary to each other. In this relaxed and delightful painting of Marie-Thérèse Walter, the woman for whom Picasso finally left his wife Olga, we see her holding a green necklace, sitting in a wooden armchair which has a brightly coloured padded back and seat. It has been suggested that the blue half of the face and the arm are Picasso's own, as he imagines himself, like the chair, holding Marie-Thérèse. He painted many pictures of this lady, all showing her softly rounded figure from several viewpoints at the same time. Her hand, on which she rests her cheek, perhaps looks like a dove's wing, or even the tail fin of a fish, whereas the other, the blue one, reminds us of a strong and fierce lion's paw. Together they play with the necklace, happy in each other's company. The 2 themes of love and violence interweave throughout Picasso's work between 1925 and 1937, and form important themes for many of his most admired paintings, sculptures, drawings, and etchings. This painting of a weeping woman was done in 1937 during the Spanish Civil War. Picasso, a Spaniard, had just painted Guernica, perhaps his most famous picture. A huge mural, which was his personal outcry against the callous bombing without any warning of innocent civilians, including children, in the Spanish town of Guernica. Like most people, Picasso was outraged at this act which killed many people. The anger and sorrow he felt then can still be seen when we look at this painting today. This is a portrait of a friend, Dora Maar. She was a highly strung person, quick-tempered and often depressed. We know at this time she had recently visited a friend who was critically ill in Switzerland. Perhaps the icy blue and white jagged middle part of the painting suggests the Swiss mountain peaks, even though the spikes are Dora's fingers. Beneath them is her mouth, with lips drawn back in an agonized manner upon a handkerchief which protrudes like an icy lake or glacier. The entire white and blue section, which includes her left cheek, is heart-shaped and fragmented. It's as if Picasso is telling us that she is broken-hearted. Certainly her swollen eyes show that she has been crying. This undoubtedly is a very sad picture. But remembering Guernica, we may decide that this is not just a painting of a sad woman crying, but that the feeling it gives us are Picasso's feelings of deep sorrow and anguish for all the people of Spain and the unnecessary horror of war.